Hi, good morning. This is Andrew Demers. I'm the Communications Director here at the Insurance Department. I am happy to introduce some of my colleagues, including Vanessa from the Department of Emergency Management. To kick things off, I'll introduce our Commissioner, DJ Betancourt, but before that, one housekeeping item. We encourage questions from the audience. If you have any, please enter them into the chat, and we will be happy to address those at the end of the presentation. This and all of our webinars can be found on our YouTube page. We'll put a link to that in the chat as well. And now, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Commissioner DJ Betancourt.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am DJ Betancourt, as Andrew mentioned, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of the New Hampshire Insurance Department, and I am very glad to welcome you to this special and important conversation regarding the preventing winter damage to your home and using Ready New Hampshire resources. And we are incredibly grateful for the team at Ready New Hampshire for joining us for today's event. You know, I think as we can all appreciate, even looking out the window here this morning, that winter in New Hampshire is not a surprise. We're pretty hardy about that here in the Northeast, but the damage that it can cause is sometimes a very unpleasant surprise for a lot of Granite Staters. And every year we see homeowners facing significant and entirely avoidable losses from things like frozen pipes to ice dams, roof collapses, heating system failures, power outages, things of that nature. And, you know, we appreciate that these events don't just disrupt daily life. They can displace families. They can cause serious financial stress and lead to complicated insurance claims at really the worst possible time of the year. And one of the core responsibilities that we feel that we have here at the department is consumer protection. And part of that consumer protection mission is helping consumers to understand how to prevent the need for them to have to file a claim, to help them prevent the types of situations that might give rise to them needing to file an insurance claim. And so that's what the core theme of today's presentation is about. You're going to hear from an expert who's going to walk you through the steps and also introduce you to the planning tools and the resources available through ReadyNH.gov, which is the website for Ready New Hampshire. They are a powerful and underused resource, and we really are hoping that as a result of the webinar today, more Granite Staters will make use of those resources to better prepare themselves for when winter events and winter scenarios arise and might strike. And so with all of that in mind, again, I want to thank you for being here, for being proactive and seeking out opportunities to get educated and to better position yourself, to be better prepared for winter events. We really do appreciate that. It means a lot. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters today. And again, I think you're going to find today's presentation to be very useful and informative.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. My name is Vanessa Palangi. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator with the state's Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. And under that role, I am responsible for our disaster website, or disaster preparedness website, ReadyNH.gov. Can people see my screen I'm sharing right now? Yes, I got nods. Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to talk about ReadyNH.gov a little bit and the 4 core steps that our agency pushes out for people to take in their own lives for individual preparedness. So the site itself, this is just a look at one of the inside pages. So disasters we have on the site, there's a bunch of different features, but one of them is that we have disasters listed that typically happen within the state. You may look at it and say earthquakes, but we do get a lot of earthquakes. We get like 10 earthquakes a year on average. They're just usually not very large. Same thing with tornadoes. We average about a tornado a year. But if you notice, we do also have winter storms on there, and extreme cold and flooding, which we might see a little bit of today. So that's something that we're seeing more of in the winter. Is we're seeing more rain on snow events, so we're getting a lot more flooding events in New Hampshire in the winter. So that is also something to kind of be aware of when you're doing your home preparations, even winter and summer. So I talked about I mentioned that we have 4 core steps. The first one that we say is stay informed. So being winter ready really means understanding the weather that's coming in and staying informed of changing conditions that could happen. Several ways to do so. We recommend that people have applications on their phone where they can receive alerts, whether it's through the National Weather Service. At the state level, we use what's called Genesis Protects, which is an application you can enter in your zip code, which will give you alerts in your area. And you can also go on to ReadyNH.gov and sign up for NH Alerts, which works in conjunction with Genesis Protect. But the great thing about NH Alerts is you can receive notifications not just on your cell phone, but if you would prefer to get an email or get a landline phone, call to a landline phone, NH Alerts can do that as well. Then another good app that we recommend that people have is the FEMA app. This is free. It does give you information in your zip code, but you can also enter in, I believe it's up to either 5 or 6 zip codes. So if you have a home in another spot, if you have, a vacation home or something, you can enter that zip code in as well, and you can get alerts for weather in that area. And then also, if something does happen, it offers pre and post disaster guidance. Gives you tips on what you should do and how to go about, recording that damage and getting assistance if it rises to that level. So our second step that we talk about is having a plan. A lot of people have plans for if there's a fire in your home, but people don't necessarily discuss what happens if you can't get back to your home. How are you going to protect it? Especially if you have something like pets there, who's going to take care of those pets if they're back in the house. So we recommend, having some sort of plan, talking to neighbors, having those discussions so that you can make sure that somebody has access to your house if you need them to make sure that you're taking care of the different things that might need to be taken care of if you're unable to get back home. And so another thing about having a plan, so we do have these on ReadyNH.gov. We have what's called emergency contact cards because a lot of people don't memorize phone numbers anymore because we have our cell phones. And so a lot of times you just don't know what those phone numbers are. So you could use those emergency contact cards to put in things. You could put that consumer service line that Andrew put in the chat. You could put that on there. You could put your homeowner's insurance phone numbers, anything like that you may need in some sort of emergency. And then we have family emergency plans also available for download that you can go through with your family, your neighbors, whoever you feel like should be involved. Making a kit, step number 3. So we recommend that you have an emergency kit on hand that will help you for at least 72 hours. Especially, talk about these winter storms, you could be seeing power outages. So having things like flashlights and batteries is super important. In those 72 hours, the reason being is you are your own first responder for those first 72 hours. So whatever is happening, the first responders are going to be helping out with, wherever that incident is in the immediate area, but also things that are prioritized, things like schools and hospitals, they're going to be paying more attention there. So you need to be able to protect yourself for at least those 72 hours. I started recommending that people have a couple of kits. So you have your 72-hour kit, but then you have something that goes out, spans for a week, and maybe something that spans out for 2 weeks. And you need your kit to be able to either shelter in place. So if you're stuck in your house for any sort of reason, being able to shelter in place. A lot of us had to do that during COVID, so we're all pretty familiar with that. But making sure that you have things that could protect your home in that kit. As I mentioned, those power outages, if you do have a generator, making sure that you're operating that properly away from the house, just keeping your home safe. And then something if you need to leave your home, evacuate, go to a shelter. So having something that you can take with you, whether that kit's in a backpack or something that's easily accessible and you can transport. So I mentioned that supplies for 3 days. Talk about medications. Don't forget items for your pets. If you have a pet, if you need to evacuate, if you go, your pet should go with you. They might not necessarily be accepted at the same shelter that you might be going to, but they do need to be accepted at some sort of shelter. So like I said, if you go, they go. We always like to include preparing on a budget because a lot of people are on a budget and we don't want this to be overwhelming or for people to feel like they have to spend a lot of money. So a couple of tips here, right? Have your list ready. We do have emergency kit shopping lists on ReadyNH.gov. So you could download those and then check off items as you go through. A lot of times you might have items already in your home. So just gathering them and keeping them in that one spot so they're all together. So that, like I said, if you need to either find them to shelter in place or if you have to go, they're all right there and easily transportable. Stockpiling tap water. If you are putting water into plastic bottles, we recommend that you change it out every 6 months because the plastic does degrade over time. Don't make French toast. So we always tell people, go to the grocery store before large storms, especially in the winter, and what's missing off the shelves? Eggs, bread, and milk. All of those things are perishable, so they're not really your best choices to pick. We are in the winter, so I guess if you lost power, you could put them outside, but really we recommend people choose other items that are not perishable. The dollar store can also be a great place to find different things for cheap to put into that kit. And then also just set a budget for yourself. If you're buying one item a month, before you know it, at the end of the year, you've got 12 items that you've added to that kit. Changing with the seasons, so we do recommend that as well, especially in the winter. You want to make sure that you have those proper items to keep you either warm or safe during the winter months when things can get icy, especially during bad weather, keeping yourself prepared. So we do say to review your plan and kit every 6 months. So you could do it kind of with the time changes if that's something that is convenient for you. Replacing items that may either you've used, the water I mentioned already. Same thing with medications and your food. And then the fourth step we talk about is getting involved. So I've got a bunch of things on the slide of ways that you can get involved. One thing that I really liked when I was presenting to a group down in the Hampton area was somebody had mentioned that they actually got together as a neighborhood and went through like everybody's professions, any sort of special trainings that they have. And they created a list so that the neighbors could help each other. So if you think about something where, you're stuck at your home, you need repairs, or you're looking to, shore up your home somehow to protect it from a storm, having those resources on hand, you might have a neighbor that can help you out. So just keeping that in mind and being able to do that with each other could really be useful for you. And then there's the website once again. So ReadyNH.gov is the website. Another thing that I would say to a lot of what we talk about, so as I mentioned, we have those things on the website listed out. And so if you go to winter storms, it's going to give you a way to prepare your house before the winter storm happens. Then it will talk about what to do during the storm and then what to do after the storm. So a lot of those different things will talk about, making sure that your yard is cleaned up, that things are taken in. Today, we're expecting high winds, right? Make sure that branches on trees are trimmed, that any items that are outside that could become projectiles are actually put away because you don't want them coming through a window or through your roof. So those are just things to really pay attention to during times like this. Like I said, especially on a day like today where we're expecting high winds. And that's all for me, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. We will turn it over now to our insurance folks, James Fox and Luann King.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Vanessa. That was wonderful. So we have a slideshow too, and I think that Luann's going to run the slides. She prepared them. And we're going to start with slide 2. Yeah, you know, a lot of what we're talking about here is preparedness. And I was leaving the house today. I live on a hill, and I slid down the driveway and almost slid into traffic. So I definitely should have put my snow tires on, which does raise you know, the goal a lot of times in winter is to avoid making a claim, because if you have to make a claim, it can be difficult to get through the claim. And even if you get through it successfully, you might not be as satisfied as you like to be. So definitely be prepared. And yeah, I know we're talking about homeowners, but I thought what I'd like to do to start with is discuss how auto insurance, all the insurances kind of work together. Mainly because I don't think a lot of times consumers know that, and this is, in my mind, supposed to be for consumers. So there's 2 primary insurance coverages you get. There's obviously a homeowner's policy, and if you don't have a homeowner's policy, you have a renter's policy. And then there's an auto policy. And really those 2 policies, the way I always learned it, they're designed to work together to protect you. So if you, for example, when I was in my car sliding down the driveway this morning, that would have been my auto policy. If I slid out into traffic, it would have helped me with med pay coverage, which is part of your auto policy. I would have obviously been liable for if I slid into a car that was coming down Route 11. So I would have had my liability coverage. So you have if you're in your auto or anything related to your auto, you're going to have your auto coverage. But the homeowner's policy is designed to, in my mind, to really work with the auto policy. So if you're dealing with your auto, you're going to have your auto coverages. And if you're dealing with your anything other than that, it's probably your homeowner's coverage. And a lot of people don't always think about the fact that, yeah, it covers your home and the property coverage, but it also does a lot of liability. That's liability, in my mind, usually anything other than auto. And the homeowner's policy also gives you, for example, a little bit of workers' comp for a very inexpensive price. So you have those 2 policies. And then the other policy, as a way I learned it, if you have significant assets, then you really should have, sitting above those, an umbrella policy, which sits above both of those policies. And the great thing about an umbrella policy is that, as I learned it, that's the best deal in the insurance business. It's a very low price for quite a bit of coverage, sitting above the auto and the homeowners. You have to keep the auto and homeowners at a certain level as terms of amount of coverage you purchase to trigger to be able to get the umbrella. But if you have those 3 policies all working together, it's almost like a little triangle. If you have all those policies working together, then you should be generally pretty covered in life. So that's my little, I guess my suggestion is if you don't have an umbrella policy, you might consider getting one. Okay, so now going to what we're talking about here today, the homeowners insurance policy. We have it's broken down into sections. We have the dwelling protection. As I said, covers your physical structure of your house. And that is a lot of what people are concerned about, which we'll discuss a little bit later, because obviously in winter you can have snow on the house and you can have ice, which can damage your house. And there's ways you want to protect against that from happening. You also have, and that's kind of on an all risk basis, and it's got to be a sudden and accidental event. And then the next thing we have is a personal property, and that's the contents of your house is the best way to look at that. And then we have liability coverages. As I said, that's probably more expansive than if we give a test. Most people think it is. So, I'm sorry, we have loss of use. That is another thing. So if you need temporary housing, so if you, for example, your roof collapses and you can't stay in your house, then you have a loss of use. So you can then go out and rent temporary housing. Then you have liability coverage, and that's pretty broad. That's very broad. It's liability on your premises, which case for slip and fall. Like I know today we're talking a lot about, getting your house, damage to your house, but an equally important thing is to make sure that your house is safe if people are visiting. You want to make sure your your walkways are shoveled and salted, and your driveway is salted, those kinds of things. So no one gets in an accident and then they point the finger at you. People don't realize even best of friends can say, hey, I got hurt at your house, I'm gonna have to bring a claim. Those are friendly claims, but it's much better to not have that happen. One important thing that we always say when we talk about these coverages, we're going to talk about pipes bursting, and that is generally, not always, but generally covered under your homeowner's policy. But the one thing that is not covered under your homeowner's policy is flood damage, and that is any basically surface water from outside the house coming and interacting with your house that causes damage to the house. That reason that's not covered is because if you think about it, insurance companies, although we think of them as large, but they have, they don't have unlimited funds. So if they had a significant flood in a say a state, and probably not New Hampshire, but if they have a significant flood in a lower lying state, say like Florida, that could be extremely expensive and could wipe out the insurance company. So much like 9/11 when the Twin Tower attack happened, and TRIA was created to address that because the insurance companies could not handle that significant loss, which is a terrorism related federal statute. We have the federal government always steps in and does has flood coverage. I would say, if you're worried about flood, then you want to look at the number one thing you want to look at is how much flood coverage would you get if you purchased a flood policy? Because again, like today's I think somebody brought this up, may have been Vanessa before we started. Like, this is a classic example of it has snowed quite a bit, so we are in winter conditions. But now with the rain, you have the rain itself, you have warmer conditions, so also snow melting, so that can interact with your house. That would be a flood scenario. And then let's say your house is significantly damaged, and then you say, oh, I have a federal flood policy, but that only gives you up to a certain amount. And then above that, you can buy private flood insurance. So you might want to consider, if you have a nice house, you might want to buy, it's always about what assets are you protecting. You might want to buy private flood insurance. And I would say all of it we've talked about between the homeowners, the auto, the umbrella, the flood insurance, the private flood insurance, public flood insurance. That is why in the state of New Hampshire, unless you really know insurance, you got to really know insurance. I'm not sure I know insurance enough. You really want to get an agent who can help you with all these things, make sure to navigate what you need, what you don't need, and what amounts would be appropriate for you. And also if there's a claim, especially a lot of small towns in New Hampshire, if you go to your small town agent, they will make sure you're taken care of in terms of advocating for you with the insurance company, even though they are the agent of the insurance company. I think from my experience at the department over the last 14 years, the agents, the independent agents, have just do a great job in New Hampshire. And then, so the last one on this slide is coverage may be denied if damage results from lack of maintenance, not keeping heat on in vacant homes. So a lot of times, from different directions, I think if you wanted to put it in a lay sense, lack of maintenance can result in a lack of coverage. Just like if you have let's say you have a very old house and it was, the roof wasn't put on correctly, and then they have a roof collapse, they might say, well, that was defective construction work. But another one we have, which is hugely important to remember, is heating in the home. So if you don't maintain your heat, and this claim does come into the department on occasion, it's very sad. The insurance companies can deny you coverage. So sometimes people think they're not in New Hampshire in the winter, say they're snowbirds, and they think that their home is getting an automatic replenishment of propane or oil, and it's not. And then obviously the result is the heat dips below. Then they have a loss, and maybe it's a significant loss. Then they think they're going to be covered, but the policy does not cover that. And again, probably the best way I like to think of this is when you look at an insurance policy, you got to think of it as a bundle of sticks. And that bundle of sticks is all the risks in the world that could result. And there are significant risks the insurance companies do take on, but there are other significant risks the insurance companies do not take on. And that is, that is part of the business of insurance. Like when we regulate insurance, there are certain mandatory things they have to do, but beyond that, it is on a voluntary basis. Last thing I'll say on this before we go to the next slide is I would also, companies have reputations as to in terms of claims also. So if you're going to an independent agent, you price point is always obviously important, especially in today's world. But you also want to look at the reputation of the company in terms of how easy it is if you do ultimately have to have a claim to get through. And the agents know, some companies, they're within their rights to run down every little issue, and they do. And some companies make it a little easier to get through. So that's what I have to say about this slide, and we'll go on to the next slide.
Hold on, James. I know it's not working.
No,
Hold
you
on.
had it.
Here we go.
All right, overview of common hazards. This is frozen pipes. That is a thing that happens. We are a cold state, and frozen pipes that usually will be covered if your heat was on and you think, why would the pipes freeze? But there can be unusual circumstances where the pipes still do freeze. Ice dams. I think everybody knows what an ice dam is in New Hampshire, but that's basically the ice freezing at the edge of the roof and then coming back up the roof. So it's at the edge of the roof, it freezes, and then it backs its way up the roof, causing damage to the roof. And then basically the insurance companies don't pay to remove the ice dam itself. That's not really that's not really an insurance loss that you need to pay for yourself. The damage to the roof is covered, and then if you have water damage inside, then that might get a little bit tricky. That's a good point to say, good place to say, if you have one of these winter losses and you go through the process and you don't think you were treated or you didn't get as much coverage as you thought you would get, that is why, as the commissioner says, we have a consumer unit. And, we do a thorough review of every claim that comes in. It's the consumer unit looks at it, the legal unit, which is Emily Doherty, looks at it. I look at it kind of from forms and market conduct. And if we have a rate issue, we bring the actuary in. So if you don't feel that, the coverage what you thought you were going to get is what you did get, you should 100% let the department know. We do kind of develop these things as we go along. Sometimes we say the insurance company is incorrect. Sometimes we say, no, the insurance company did it correctly. And sometimes we say the insurance company did it correctly, but maybe we should make a little tweak, a change to the law because it doesn't quite seem like it should have come out this way. So it is a great process we do internally to get the right answer for the individual and also the right answer systemically. The next one, we have roof damage. Heavy snow loads and ice buildup can compromise roof integrity. That's true. As we said earlier, as Vanessa was saying, you might want to try to clean your roof if you can to avoid a claim. And then if you have a roof collapse, that would be covered, but you might have a situation where they look at the roof and they go, well, this is improper construction. There may be other reasons why it's not going to get covered. So the best thing to do with these is to try to avoid the risk from occurring. Heat assisting failures, risk of fire, and then I didn't quite touch on that. So what we have in New Hampshire is under RSA 407, which is our statute, is the New Hampshire fire policy. So that is the only policy that is ultimately in P&C land that is ultimately written into our statutory scheme. So every homeowners policy, because that does provide coverage of fire along with other things, must comply with RSA 407. So Luann, when she's the supervisor of the form review team, when they look at that, they make sure that everything in there is in compliance. So that's an important role, but you obviously want to make sure your heating system is in operation, operational, and have it checked at least once a year. And these issues are among the most common winter insurance claims in New Hampshire. I would also say slip and falls are at people's houses too. Prevention can reduce risk, and ensure claims are not denied due to negligence. Right. So you want to do everything you can to avoid a claim. And I say, I think everything that Vanessa mentioned is a great way to look at it. And also it's a lot of this is common sense. If you feel like there's too much of a buildup of snow on your roof, then you should try to get your roof cleared. If there's a walkway of snow in your walkway, you should try to get that cleared. If you see ice dams, you should A, try to get the ice dam removed, and B, a lot of times people will put those electric heat wires on their roof. You should try to have a way so you can get through each winter without having to worry about ice dams. And again, because only some of the ice dam claim is covered, some parts aren't. You really want to avoid having to go through that and find out, oh yeah, you didn't get as much coverage as you'd hoped for, and you're out a significant amount of money out of pocket, especially around the holiday season. Okay, Luann, we can go to the next one. The insurance tips. So keep your heat at 55 or higher, even on a way. That is that is 100% a great thing to make sure you do, so you don't freeze so your pipes don't freeze. There are obviously fluctuations in heating systems, so I wouldn't push it too close to the line of actual frozen pipe. Let faucets drip during extreme cold. It just keeps the water flowing through the pipes. Insulate pipes in unheated areas, attics, crawl spaces. That is A, it's hugely important, and B, I would say that is one of the ones if you're in what I call the North Country, north of Concord, then that is an important thing, but also a difficult thing. So try to heat areas where pipes are that you don't want to have burst. And then open cabinet doors under sinks to allow warm air circulation. That's a great idea. You don't usually heat in those areas, so opening them up, especially in extreme cold.
The ice dam prevention, you're cleaning your gutters before the snowfall. You're using roof rakes to remove the snow from the edges as high up as you can get safely. Improve your attic insulation and ventilation. Sealing air leaks around chimneys and vents is hugely important. And then before winter hits, we want to make sure that you review your homeowner's policy for winter-related exclusions. And this is a really good time to just sit down with your insurance agent and make sure that if your company offers add-on endorsements that are important to you for coverage, that you go ahead and purchase these ahead of the time that you need them, because insurance is not retroactive. You have to have the coverage in place before the claim is filed in order for there to be coverage, obviously. So you would ask your insurers. A lot of companies offer extra backup, extra coverage for water backup, overflow, or sump pump failure. That could be important depending on if you have a basement that likes to flood. Right now, today, it looks like it's going to be a flood day. Did James just join us? I heard a tone. No? Okay.
I think that was him leaving.
Okay. So consider how you have your coverage set up. Most of your policies, your homeowner policies, are going to pay your damages for your home and outbuildings on what they call a replacement cost coverage basis, which really means that when a claim occurs and the amount is assessed, they're going to give you enough money so that you can replace the damage to your home or outbuilding. They'll usually pay you first on an actual cash value basis. You do the repairs, you present them with the paid receipts, and then they will cut you a check for the difference between what they've already given you, the actual cash value, to the replacement cost. So in the end, the insurance has paid you how much it costs to actually get the damages repaired to your outbuildings at replacement cost. And that coverage is also available on personal property. That is an add-on. So you might want to ask your agent how your personal property is paid right now on your homeowner policy. It'll default to the actual cash value, but unless you want to take depreciation on anything in the event of a covered loss, you're going to want to add that replacement cost contents endorsement. It's not very expensive, and it's gonna give you a lot of peace of mind after your claim. And it's also a good thing to talk about, we always want to document your inventory. We actually have the New Hampshire Insurance Department. We actually speak often about just taking an inventory of your home in case there's a really catastrophic loss, like a roof collapse or whatnot, that makes sure you can't go back in your home. Are you able to really remember all of your contents? So you can just take your cell phone, for example, put it on video, walk slowly around your house, open drawers, closet doors, that type of thing. So you have you almost have like a video inventory.
Sure thing. Well, obviously, sorry about the technical difficulties we've had here. As was noted, we're having a bit of winter weather, as we speak. So, as I was saying, we're living today's webinar in real time. So what I'll conclude with is simply again, to thank you all for attending, for taking the time to get yourselves a little bit more prepared, a little bit more informed. I know that a lot of the things that were discussed seem like they're fairly common sense, routine type of maintenance and precautions that we all should, as a matter of common sense, perform in and around our homes. But again, we see all too often from consumers who call us that sometimes these things go by the wayside and they're not done, and they can cause real problems for that particular consumer down the line. And so, obviously, while every storm, every winter event, any type of weather event is not going to, for the most part, typically impact the entire state. And so you might read a story in the newspaper or see something on the news of a storm or weather event somewhere in the state, and it doesn't impact you. That is not comfort for you to simply think that it can't happen to you. The next storm, the next weather event that comes along could very well impact you. And as I like to say, and as I like to remind consumers, inherent in New Hampshire's live free or die culture is the reality that living in New Hampshire carries a responsibility, and that you, in the end, in these types of situations, are your own first line of self-defense. You have to take the time to be prepared, to take the basic steps to protect yourself, your home, your family, whatever the case might be. And so, again, for those of you who have joined us today, you're already doing this, but take the appropriate time to work through the resources that are available to you. There are resources on the New Hampshire Insurance Department's website. Obviously, ReadyNH.gov is a phenomenal resource. And again, I want to thank the team at the Department of Safety for joining us today and sharing some outstanding information and reminders. But also work with your insurance carrier. Work with an independent agent or an agent of your insurance carrier to ensure that you have all of the coverages that you need as well. I never miss the opportunity during events such as this to remind people that you've got to have your own separate flood insurance policy. Do not assume that flood is going to be covered as part of your underlying homeowner's insurance policy. It is not. You have to purchase a separate flood policy. That is so important. As was mentioned, we have had a couple of flood events in the last couple of years, and I've had the heartbreaking conversations with consumers who have lost everything in a flood. They thought that they were going to have coverage, that their insurance policy was going to help them rebuild, get their lives back on track. And as I've said, the conversations that I've had to have with these consumers have been heartbreaking and tragic, because unless they had a flood policy, they're not going to be covered for that. So please check your coverages. Take the steps that we've discussed here in the webinar today. Avail yourself of the resources on the websites that I mentioned. A little bit of prevention today has the potential to save you a ton of heartache and hassle down the line. So again, appreciate it very much. And we look forward to seeing you all at next month's webinar. Have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. And we'll see you all in January.